What's going on, guys? Zane here with Everything Vibe. I want to welcome you back for another episode. I am back this time, and I'm here with Ronnie. Ronnie, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
You did fantastic on that last intro.
Thank you. I'm happy you're back though, because I'm not. Yeah, that's not typically me having to start out those. I'm used to starting out the interviews by now, but just the random episodes. I think I had to listen back to some of your episodes and kind of. All right, how does he start these things off again?
Oh, come on. I have like the most generic. You should not model it off of me at all. But I'm back. It feels great. We're kind of in the middle of a busy week here, so I apologize. This is coming to you guys a day later than we said. I know Tuesdays are our episode days, and so I'm moving basically, and excited about that. I'll have a little studio set up where Ronnie and I can talk shop. Hopefully by next week or in the next 2 weeks. But until then, just lots of craziness. How's everything with you, man?
Hey, it's going well. I mean, I've just been just kind of chilling. And like I mentioned to Damon on the last episode, the weather here is starting to get a little nicer.
Yep.
It's still a little bit up and down, but like with that, I think with the weather starting to get better in Chicago, your spirits kind of get up. You start trying to be a little bit more productive and everything. So I've been out and about getting lots of stuff done, and obviously getting more and more involved and active on the podcast. I'm trying to become more active on our Twitter account and all that sort of stuff.
Actually, Ronnie has been killing it on our Twitter account. So we just hadn't been focusing on it as much, but Ronnie's been manning that recently. So if you guys are on Twitter and want to connect with us, it is at Everything Vive. And we're trying to be part of the conversation, be a part of what's going on with VR on Twitter. And it's great especially after you met all those folks at GDC. I feel like there's just a lot of cool stuff that they're sharing that we're able to kind of do a little 140 or 280 character limit comments on. And I'm loving it, man. It's been really cool so far. Okay, jumping back in. We had a quick recording issue, but we're back in. And Ronnie, I say we just jump right into this week's topic, which is Ready Player One. If you guys haven't had a chance to watch it yet, we actually wanted to talk about it like literally the week after it came out. But
it's been one of those, every single time we've done an episode, we've been, hey, should we talk about it this week?
Yeah.
Let's wait a little bit.
We wanted to give you guys some time to watch. And I know not everybody can get to the movies right away or whatever the case is. So we wanted to give some time out there, not give spoilers or whatever. But this is your spoiler warning. We are going to talk Ready Player One. And not so much about it as a movie review, but as VR enthusiasts. Like I felt like you and I, or at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, but I would assume it's something similar. I was watching through probably a different lens than most other people who went to the movie, right? Because we're kind of in this world. We like know what's happening in VR just because we're paying attention, not because we're anybody special, but we're paying attention. We're excited about it. So to kind of see it hit that mainstream and then also be able to see what, and this is why I love sci-fi, is because sci-fi just shows you, people get super creative. They imagine what they want the future to be, and then scientists of modern day go and create it, right? Like, you look at sci-fi shows from like 30, 40 years ago where they had, people were doing video chat with one another back in the day when Telegram was still an option to communicate. And now it's just like everybody's got FaceTime on their phone or Skype or whatever the case is. So it was cool for me to see that perspective of where, someone saw VR in 2048. So like 30 years from now. And, with the rate technology is progressing, I kept telling myself and people after the movie, I'm just like, I wouldn't be surprised if we're that far along in terms of like VR tech. I'm not talking about like the state of the world and all that, but I'm just, with what home consumer VR will be in 30 years, I would not be surprised if we're far off from that, or maybe even past that. But I mean, what are your initial thoughts in terms of like how it portrayed and got you excited about VR? Just initial thoughts.
No, I mean, as far as VR and kind of what it was showing off there, I definitely think it's awesome that a mainstream movie is coming out that gets people excited for what VR can and hopefully will do in the future. I had a lot of friends that, around the launch of the movie were asking me questions about VR or kind of asking me what I thought about the movie. And you could definitely tell that it was creating buzz. So as far as that front's concerned, I think it was awesome to have, something just like, present and in the in the mainstream media that was relevant to VR. As far as like I guess what they showed technology wise versus the potentials of what it might be like being in a more fully realized virtual world, I think I liked the representations of the virtual worlds more than I like the technology stuff. And I guess I'll explain that a little bit. Like as far as like when the characters were actually in VR, I thought that was amazing. Like I thought the fact that they kind of had their in-game avatars and were able to feel things through haptics within the game and really be going in all of these environments. And obviously the environments were like, they were a little CG and everything, but I think that was kind of partially done intentionally to make you realize you were in a game.
But like, just a quick side note, I thought the CG was done really well, especially when it interlaced really with like the real world showing. But just wanted to comment on that. Go ahead.
Yeah. But so all that stuff, like being in the game, like being in those really unique environments, and like without giving too many spoilers. I mean, from the way that
we gave a spoiler warning, so
we can give spoilers. Yeah, so I mean the racing scene I thought was done awesomely. Same thing with like the scene in the ballroom or the club or whatever. I'm trying to remember where they were floating over that big abyss.
That was really cool.
And then even later scenes in the movie where they were in VR, where like they were reliving moments from The Shining and all of those different, like that was one of the coolest parts I thought of the movie.
Yeah.
But all of those ideas, like having those types of environments in VR and being able to be in a movie that you loved growing up with, or being able to really feel like you're part of the environment. I mean, we're getting that a little bit in VR right now, but I hope there's more and more experiences like that in the future. So like those kind of things, I mean, it would be awesome, like not to get into too much territory as far as like a game talk, because I'm sure we'll talk about this, later in the week or in the coming weeks. But like Ark Park, for example, is kind of scratch that itch of Jurassic Park, but not in the way that I would want it to, like as far as just reliving the movie, right? Like man, wouldn't it be cool if you could jump into VR and you're literally like experiencing what it would be like to be in some of the films that you grew up with. So like those kind of ideas, seeing those executed in Ready Player One, I thought was just a ton of fun, awesome, and super inspirational as far as, what developers should kind of, try for, like saying as if that's an easy task. But, like somewhere in the future, it's awesome to aspire to making, creations and experiences that are on that kind of level. So like on that front, I thought it was super awesome, super inspirational. But then as far as the tech goes, I thought it was kind of a combination between like the tech in the movie, to be honest with me, let me down a little bit just because I felt like it was kind of a combination of stuff we already have, like with headsets that are oftentimes too bulky, and like they were pared down somewhat, but they were like kind of all over the place. So like I couldn't like thinking back to the movie, I can't think of like one design that I was like, man, like I want that design as my VR headset, And then I also thought it was a little bit strange how and this also might be best for the movie since we don't really know how all this stuff's going to shake up. But like, as far as like looking for locomotion solutions for future VR, implementations, like in this movie, you saw all kinds of implementations of different locomotions. Like you saw everything from omnidimensional treadmills, which I'll get to in a little bit because I think that one of the treadmills that was used in the movie is actually like a real product that's being developed. But like you have everything from that to like bungee, setups where they're off the ground, to like situations where they're just moving around like a Vive situation, to like just so many different methods of movement that were kind of showed in the movie. And to me, like I just didn't see any cohesion. Like and Steven Spielberg, I mean, he's an adventure film kind of director, right? Like he's not like a super like one could argue a movie like Minority Report takes a lot of those details very seriously, but like like as far as like I feel like it was a little bit like suspend your disbelief for a moment. Like like we're not going to overthink about how VR works in this movie. We're going to kind of let all kinds of different VR, and I haven't read the book, so I don't know how much leeway that gives them, but like, yeah, so it was just kind of all over the place with the tech side of things, and it would have been interesting to see like more of a futurist kind of look at like I said, like a Minority Report, or a movie like that, where like my understanding from Minority Report was they really did try to like take a serious look at where they thought technology might be in the future, and try to show off like visual interfaces and stuff like that, like they thought might actually be like advertising.
Yeah. Well,
like in this movie, I felt like it was like there was a lot going on. So like I'm sure like they did a lot of research and they threw a lot of stuff out at the table, but like there wasn't one like cohesive, I thought, vision of what the technology would be like,
Yeah, and just to quickly comment on that, to call back to like I think one of the first things that I had mentioned, I wonder if that's maybe because like the different lens that you and I were looking at it with, right? It's because we're already in the space, so when we see a vision of what that technology looks like, it's only people like us that are like, oh, what are the details? Like, how far are we from like getting a bungee system, right? Whereas like your casual moviegoer is going to be like, oh, VR, that's cool. And like you said, suspend their disbelief, like it's, or suspend belief, whatever the case is. Like for them, like that wasn't like an integral part of the movie. Whereas like as VR enthusiasts, like we go in and we're studying this because like we want to know how far away we are from getting those omnidirectional treadmills or that bungee system. And like when can I install that in my apartment, right? Like that's,
and we've been, so we've been thinking about all these we've been thinking about all these problems like so much compared to your your average moviegoer doesn't think about any of those things, has no idea, like hasn't really thought about what probably it would even be like to solve for those kind of problems, let alone like what would the solution be. And yeah, like that's
I mean let's take it a step further. How many of the millions of people who watch this, how many of them do you think actually spent at least an hour inside an Oculus or Vive? I'm not talking about like other, you know what I mean? Like I'm talking about like in a premium headset right now. So I feel like
I actually wonder, like on that question, I actually wonder like how many people saw this movie and either A, thought that it was complete fiction, or B, like had any inkling. Like I wonder how many people actually know.
Point.
Like
that is a good
know
point.
How close we are to some of this stuff and how far away we are from other, because there's some stuff in the movie that I'd argue like we're doing really well already.
I mean, the software, like the software inside, I mean, we're not too far away. Like if you had like a company or like a developer that like really had the backing behind them to create a gigantic world, almost like Second Life or something, where it's just like you put that together. I mean, you'd have a lot of people who'd be spending time in there, right? And it's just like, look at how, all these other platforms have developed throughout the past. I think we're just kind of waiting for someone to really implement that in a large scale way. And I mean, obviously that I don't.
No, you can socialize pretty well in VR now.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, it's not like you're gonna be seeing people's facial expressions and touching them and all that kind of stuff. But I totally agree with you. Like some of the full body avatar implementations.
You're right. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking more about like the world building, but the tech for like facial expressions and things like that will come as you go along. Like full body tracking. So.
No, but so all that stuff, like, so that's kind of where I was, like as far as like, I was kind of I think going into the movie without knowing anything about the book, without knowing anything about really the movie that much, but having a passion for the industry, I was going into it hoping that I would get to see a visionary kind of show us what VR might be like in the future. And instead, I feel like I kind of got, I guess, what I should have expected more from like a Steven Spielberg, which is like a fun adventure, like action packed kind of movie that's less worried about, I think, some of the technical details and more worried about like telling like an interesting story. And
it was, I mean, essentially what it boils down to was a 21st century like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory story, right? Like it was more so on the characters, with the tech being like a commodity or like just a part of it rather than, and the thing is like, and that's why I'm saying like, just for us to be somewhat cognizant of that. Like, and the thing is I love Spielberg and his movies. So I just appreciate the fact that like, as a movie like this was able to come out and shine somewhat of a spotlight on VR. But I think it's a fantastic point that you brought up where like, how many people watch this? And I would say it's a significant percentage. And by significant, I would say like, 20, 30% or more of people who haven't tried like, top line VR or realize just how far along the tech 80%. Is. Yeah. See, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to get too crazy with it, but I wouldn't disagree with that number. I think for a lot of people, it was just like, oh, this looks like a cool, like futuristic movie. Let's go check it out. Right. But like, for us and for the folks that listen and are in this industry, it was, we went into it with like a very different mindset of like, okay, 30 years, I think we can beat that timeline type of thing. Right.
Yeah. Like, no. And the other thing that was kind of like, I think it's interesting that like, I mean, to some extent, I mean, this book came out before VR was really like mainstream the way it is. I mean, it's not mainstream really, but like before it was a consumer product, I think, right? Like
I think it was like 2012.
2012, yeah. So like it was really like barely. It was really as an industry. I mean, there were some examples of it that you could find at like I don't know, the theme park type implementations and that sort of. Like
2011. Just want to be accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, even earlier. To your point.
But yeah, there really like was no real idea that people would actually like. In many ways, I'm sure the book inspired people to actually get VR to where it is right now. So like, I'd be interested to kind of read the book just to see how closely the take from the movie is compared to the book as far as like where they saw VR. Because I bet you. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that we have now was partially inspired by some of the stuff that was talked about in that book. But like,
100%. I mean, I have the book now. I just got it from my cousin, so I'm gonna read it. And if you want to read it after me, definitely let me know.
But I was gonna say like back then, since VR wasn't really a real thing when the book was being written. Like I know that Ready Player One is really known to play up the nostalgia stuff a lot and play up like particularly like kind of nerd quote unquote nostalgia and like old video games and that sort of thing. And like on one hand, that stuff is really cool. And I mean, part of me when I was watching the movie was thinking, man, like this is probably the biggest budget, like video game quote unquote movie that I'm ever going to see. Like as far as, I mean, who knows, like we say that now, but like, look what happened with all the Marvel movies. And like, I would have probably said the same thing 25 years ago on those. But like, yeah, I mean, seeing some of the racing sequences and like just like how many cameos of different characters and stuff from video games. That was cool.
That's what made the racing sequence so awesome for me.
Oh, yeah.
Just because like I had to take a step back and like do like an out of body experience and analysis and just be like, wait, let me realize what's happening here. And it was like all the different IP, right? Like King Kong, Back to the Future, like. You're never going to see that on one screen together interacting. And it was just like
Speaking as a lawyer, like as I was watching it,
so
again, like that was probably like, I would say that the amount of IP like in one world in that movie was like more of a more like more unlikely than the technology of the VR.
Yeah, I was reading that like only someone like Spielberg has the clout to be able to pull that off, right? So,
yeah. I mean, I wish games were like that, like I wish like I could drive whatever I wanted and in every single game that I play and be like, that's like the ideal. But yeah, that's like a funny point to take away. Is like one of the things that is craziest about the movie and like least likely to happen is just like how many people were on board with this versus like what would happen in real life.
Yeah.
But I guess like I'm trying to put some of my weird thoughts into words, but like part of me was like I liked some of those references. Some of the references I thought were like a little bit too much, like the adventure Easter egg being like the final, clue or whatever. Like some of that stuff was kind of like a little bit like too on the nose for me. But then also just the idea that they tied video games and VR so closely together to where like in some sense, like, and maybe I guess that was just because the developer of the VR, technology was really into video games. And that's why you saw that a lot in this specific challenge. But like on one hand, they tried to make it seem like VR was this all pervasive thing and that all people were, obsessed with VR in the future. But on the other hand, it seemed like everyone we met that was in the virtual world were all like super fanboys that were obsessed with video games. And like we know, like in the real world now, like there's like a sizable percentage of people that are into that kind of culture, like the kind of geek nerd culture, whatever you want to say, like video game stuff, like superheroes, all that. But there's a lot of like other people too that aren't into that kind of stuff. And I'd like to think that eventually someday VR will be expansive enough to where like whether you're into that stuff or not, you'll be able to engage in some way in VR and AR and these types of technologies.
100%.
So I just thought that was a little bit like as like when you talk about 80% of the market that's going to see the movie not having tried VR, they go into a movie like this and they leave kind of thinking, oh, that was cool, but like that's more geared towards like, you know,
that
a certain type
subculture, right? Yeah.
And I just think that like that's a little, but like you know, beggars can't be choosers kind of thing. It's nice to have VR and anything mainstream, but that's just like one like downside I can see of people learning about VR strictly in this fanboy kind of like highly like, you know, video game tinted lens.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, obviously in the real world that we live in, there's so many people working on non-game related projects, which have been awesome. Like all the people that we've come across, whether that's like medical or airspace or like, it's just, there's going to be a lot of practical things. So this whole conversation about Ready Player One, I was trying to gear it away from like the actual plot and stuff of the movie, because I mean, at the end of the day, like that's just a story, right? A story can be commoditized. It can be set in any type of field or genre. Like I was just more curious about like the VR aspect, because if you do want to dive into it a little bit more, it's just like, I'm not calling this a plot hole. I'm just saying that like my vision, or at least what I see in the future of VR, is like there won't be one Oasis. Like there's room for so much more, right? Like you can just tap into any Oasis that you want. If you like, ideally, right? Like if there are competing companies or whatever the case is, like you'd have multiple different areas that people could jump into, where like an Oasis wouldn't be like the only place that everybody goes to, right? That to me actually signals a very like centralized rather than decentralized future. And I'm not trying to make a comment one way or another, but I just feel like
I was gonna go there, but I won't, since you steered away from it too.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I just feel like there's a heavy move, and we're not going to get into like blockchain and all that, but like there's just a heavy movement towards like decentralization, right? So and maybe it is a centralized platform on a decentralized network, but now we're getting a little too technical and talking about stuff that I don't really know as much about to feel qualified talking about. But my point is that, like, you know, if we're talking about that specific aspect of the movie, I would assume that there would be like other quote unquote oases or other places that people would be able to go into. So yeah, I mean, for me, it was exciting to be like a fanboy of VR and a fanboy of like the 80s and 90s nostalgia that came from the movie. You know, at the end of the day, the story's good. It's not like life changing, but for me, I
would argue a lot of Spielberg movie. Like I haven't seen a lot of his most recent, but like, yeah, he's like a great he executes on his. So like a lot of times his movies aren't super like I said, like Jurassic Park is like one of my favorite movies of all time, but the premise is pretty like, it's pretty straightforward.
And the thing is, like, it's not a knock. It doesn't have to be, you know, like Jurassic Park is a fantastic movie, and Ready Player One is a fantastic movie too. I'm not, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like the whole package, I think, is fantastic. It's like an adventure movie that incorporates so many cool futuristic elements. And for us, like one of the things that we're excited about is VR, and that's like been a hot topic for the last 2 years at this point, or probably even longer. But at least, you know, from a consumer standpoint.
No, some of those scenes, like I said, like I mean, weeks after I saw that movie, like still that race scene like really stands out on my mind as like being one of the coolest things that I've seen in a movie in a while. Just as far as like how it was shot, how busy it was, yet you could tell what was going on, how like and also how interesting like going backwards at the beginning of the race was. And has like kind of a final resolution to that problem. Like that whole sequence, like as far as like if I were to put down what my favorite part of the movie was, like that's probably my favorite scene, and probably my second scene was probably the Shining moment, because I just thought that was kind of cool.
No, absolutely. I mean, and the thing is, when you were talking about like Jurassic Park earlier, like, can you imagine like if somebody put together like a VR clip or VR snippet of like the Jeep or SUVs in the rain scene with the T-Rex? Like,
Yeah,
just
that's what I'm
imagine just
like,
being like in the car, right? And like, it would be so cool to re-experience that. And a lot of that is based on nostalgia, but I think as we've seen with VR, and as people who've tried it know, like the experience is so visceral, right? Like if you're able to re-experience, if you're able to experience stuff like that,
cool experiences like that, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, I probably don't think I would sign up for the Shining one, but Jurassic Park would be pretty cool, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other movies where you'd be able to do that, and so. I don't know, man. It has me excited overall. Like I'm glad the response was positive, and I hope that a lot of people will be discovering or exploring VR a little bit further, especially for the people who like, Samsung Gear VR. And this isn't a knock, because I think it's important that Samsung Gear VR and like Oculus Go, I feel like all that stuff should succeed, because it's the stepping stone for people to get up to Oculus and Vive. But I just hope that they realize it, and because of this movie, understand that the technology is actually much further than they had anticipated. And like, just for me, 2 years ago, or a little under 2 years ago, I came to your place thinking Google Cardboard was the extent of VR, and then you showed me the Vive and changed my life completely. So here we are.
No, and it's crazy. It's crazy that there's only so many like people that are still like, there are a lot of people that are still still have that mindset. Like if they're to try a Vive or a Rift today, their minds are blown at, oh my gosh, I didn't realize VR had came this far. And so we just want things to continue to push forward, and that can only happen when people are interested and excited to work on these kind of problems. And I think, Ready Player One is like an awesome example of a movie that can get people excited about the possibilities of VR. And also, like I'm actually super interested to see what ends up being on that Blu-ray when the movie gets released. It would be amazing if they had like an in-depth making of documentary behind the kind of research they did to prepare for the movie, like what it was like the current status of VR versus the book Ready Player One, like, what it might have taken to get a lot of the IP rights to some of the stuff. Like honestly, like just whatever it took to make that movie, I think is really fascinating. So it's an achievement in and of itself that a movie like that was even made, I think. So
100%, man. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. Guys, let us know what your thoughts are. Now that we're a little bit more active on Twitter, hit us up. Let us know what you thought of the movie, if you did get a chance to see it. Let us know your thoughts on the book as well. I mean, that's something that I'm going to read very soon, and I'm sure, Ronnie, you'll probably get to it at some point. But we definitely want to hear what you guys have to think. And Ronnie, you got anything else?
No, I think that's it. Like, we have hopefully, cross our fingers, an awesome guest lined up for next week. I don't want to announce it too soon, because we still have to work out the details, but hopefully we'll have a really awesome and timely interview coming up in the near future. So
if not next week, then the week after. But either way, we will see you guys next Tuesday. So stay tuned, and we'll go from there. Ronnie, have a good one, man. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. You too. Bye.